10, 11, and 12. This is the section from AZM Merit Review number 1. It's writing equations and sequences, writing equations to sequences and scenarios. So it tells us that we have a sequence, but it doesn't say is this arithmetic or is this geometric. Remember, arithmetic goes from one number to the next by adding or subtracting consistently. It's a common difference. And we have a common ratio with geometric, where we're going to multiply or divide by the same. So here we're going to see it. What are we doing? So let's check. How do I get from one number to the next? With your partner, I want you to figure out how do you go from one number to the next. Okay, I think I've caught on here to what the pattern is. So if you're wondering where to get started, start with the second number. Everybody type in 1. And we're going to subtract. Now in parentheses, we're going to write down the first term. Second subtract first. And we're checking, is it arithmetic? Do we have a common difference that's either or adding or subtracting? Put it back into a fraction by hitting math, fraction, enter, enter. So I can see that if I add 5/3, I end up with 1. Now let's go 1 plus 5/3. Put it back into a fraction, I end up with 8/3. So I have 8/3 here, add in parentheses 5/3. I end up with 13/3. Does everybody see the pattern that's happening? Okay, so let's write this down. Your difference is 5/3. What is your very first number in this sequence? -2/3. So here's probably a star problem. You're going to probably want to write this down unless you have a wonderful memory. A sub n equals a sub 1 plus d times the quantity n minus 1. So I start with the first number, which is -2/3, plus the common difference of 5/3 times the quantity n minus 1. And I wish I would have wrote this down a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to come and block this part off here. So I have a sub n equals -2/3 plus 5/3 n, and -1 times 5/3 is a -5/3. Okay, combining like terms. Some of you are going to combine these in your head because you already have a common denominator. Others are going to feel more comfortable grabbing a calculator. Do what you feel most comfortable with. So I'm taking -2/3 and I'm adding to it a -5/3. And I'm going to put it back into a fraction. -7/3. So a sub n equals 5/3 n minus 7/3. Now, is it acceptable to switch the order and write -7/3 plus 5/3 n? Absolutely. Either one of these would be acceptable. Turn to your partner. 30 seconds to go over how do we get that. Go ahead, please. Okay, let's do the next one. You ready? Here we go. You'll have a chance to practice these later on your own. So please take the second one and subtract it from the first. So I get -2.5. That means if I subtract 2.5 from 8.6, I end up with 6.1. That's right. So let's do that again. Let's take 6.1 and subtract 2.5. Hey, that's right. Subtract 2.5. Just checking to make sure that this entire sequence is arithmetic. Okay, so how do I move from left to right? From left to right, The common difference is subtracting 2.5. The first number in the sequence is 8.6. With your partner, you have 30 seconds to come up with an equation, an arithmetic equation, that models this sequence. Go ahead, I'll do the same. You are right. Whatever. Whether you write your final answer as a fraction or decimal does not matter. A of n should have parentheses on it, so I went back and made a correction. Please do that. Put parentheses around the n. How many of you are able to come up with the same answer that I did? Hands up. Does anybody have a specific question for me about this? Okay, let's practice right now with your partner. You have a minute and a half to do number 12 with your partner. Begin. Does anybody have questions for me on this particular problem? Okay, let's go on to the next one. Let's circle the word inverse. How do you find the inverse? To find the inverse, there's like 3 steps. The first step is the easiest. If it's not already set as a y, let's change each one of the functions into the notation y equals. That's the easiest. The second is we're going to switch the x and the y. And And our final step is going to be to now isolate the y. So I'm going to start by taking this -8 and adding it to the opposite side. Now to isolate the y, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. But how do I need to write the final answer? I've got this close to being done. What do I need to do for the final? Anybody? Right, so we're going to go back, and this was originally an f of x. I'm going to denote it as the inverse of f by having this little -1. And then x plus 8 over 3 would be fine. Okay, with your partner, you're going to do 14 and 15 while I do them. Make sure you're talking. Ready? Get set. Begin. If you're confused about number 14, feel free to look up here. I can show you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. And I'm doing that so that the 4s and the 3s cancel. Remember, they really turn into 1s when they're canceling. And now I have to distribute this to everything inside. 4/3 x plus, I know 4 times 6 is 24, but 24 divided by 3 is 8. I'll give you another minute to finish up number 15. Please go back on 8 through 15 once you finish it and start anything that you know you need to review in order to get a 4 on this exam. Then when you're done, flip to the next page, please. We're going to write an equation that models each scenario in 16 and in 17. Gary walks his dog around the block twice a day. Create an equation that demonstrates how many times he has gone around the block after D day. So let's make a little chart here. Do this with me, please. So we have two things. We have the number of days and the number of blocks. Does everybody agree with that? Okay. So let's do days first and blocks here. Okay. So how many, and day 1, how many blocks has he covered? Read the problem again to yourself if you need to. Anybody? Twice. Now this is the total number of blocks. What about after day 2? How many blocks has he completed? Okay, we're not going to keep going and keep going, but you can see this is not rocket science, right? You guys agree? Okay? Do you see a pattern down below? Are we increasing or decreasing by the exact same amount? Okay, arithmetic sequence. You ready? So here we go. What's the very first number? Come up with this. And what is the common difference? So what's my common difference? So this is my sequence right here. So 2 happens to be my common difference, and it also happens to be my first number. Come up with an equation. At this time, use A's and N's, but we're going to switch it to D's afterwards, okay? So A's and N's, just like we've been doing. Now this is assuming that, and we said n here, we're going to switch this right now and we're going to make this into days. So let's make this n into days here. So I know 2d, and you can keep this a sub d if you want. It just specifically says have d equal the number of days. So if I plug in 1 on day 1, I've done 2. Good. On day 2, I plug in day 2, 2 for day 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Day 3, 2 times 3, I've completed 6 so far in total. Day 4, I've completed 8 and so on. Does that make sense to you? Okay? So here's our answer. Now, could you have a y equals 2d? Absolutely. It just specifically says, hey, use d for days instead of an n or an x. Okay, by the way, let's keep in mind here that our days has to be, let's do this, days have to be greater or equal to 1. So you're not having like a negative d, right? You're not going to have a negative 1. How do you represent a negative 1 in terms of days? But here is our final answer. Okay, it says Jane recorded her heights at various birthdays, and we want to write a function to determine her height in terms of her age. All right, we got 4 minutes to complete this one. So let's think of a couple ways we could do this. Do you see a common difference as you go up by 1? Okay, let's make this easy on ourselves. You ready? I want you to do 4 here, 3, 2, and 1. What would be her height in inches on her 4th birthday? How'd you get that? Followed the pattern, went downwards, right? What would be the next one? 42, then 40, then. No, there's more than one way to do this. This is just what I think is simplest based on this problem. Okay, what is the initial value? 38. What is your common difference? Okay, ready? Go ahead. Create an equation with your partner. Hands raised if you have either one of these equations, just so I can see. Okay, with time running out, give me 1 second.